I'd known that beforehand, I wouldn't have given consent to what we're doing. Marketing, you're working in marketing, right? I mean, classic experimental studies in marketing a lot. Usually not involving much risk. But, and if you can't do it right after the experiment, you need to make sure that you can reach them at the end of the data collection, one way or the other, and tell them what the true purpose was. And then again, they can still say, I don't want to this behavior. Doesn't happen very often in experimental settings which are very, which are not very risky. But we always have, when we do online experiments with 300 or 400 people, we always have a handful of people that afterwards say, delete me from the data lab. So this informed consent again, what's the purpose of the study, how long does participation in the study take, what will happen during the study, what are the risks of the study, who is funding the study, important. What about confidentiality in the study? And is this being voluntary? Including can I stop at any moment? If you Google a bit, and I didn't do that very elaborately, if you Google a bit, you find hundreds of templates for informed consent forms for different purposes, for children, for special groups, for parents, for normal participants, for surveys, for experiments. There's really a lot out there. This is the one from Michigan Tech that I found quite broadly applicable. So you are being invited to participate in a research study about the extended purpose of the study. This study is being conducted from the Department of University. If PI is a student, indicates that the study is being conducted as part of an undergraduate project. Graduate student project, thesis or dissertation. Is funded, identify the funding agency. That's basic information you can easily give to anyone. Optional, you were selected as a possible participant in the study because, especially if you survey special groups, you might want to tell them, we're actually coming to you because you're important for this project since you have this characteristic. There are no known risks if you decide to participate in this research study. There are no costs to you for participating in this study. The information you provide will be, and then briefly explain what the information is being used for. The questionnaire will take about 15, 20, 25 minutes, whatever, to complete. The information collected may not benefit you directly, but the information learned in the study should provide more general benefits. The survey is anonymous. Do not write your name on the survey. And if it's a web-based survey, you could also tell them that you're not recording IP addresses, and so on and so on. No one will be able to identify you or your answers, and no one will know whether or not you participated in the study. Should the data be published, no individual information will be disclosed, and we often add that data are reported in the aggregation only. No, we seldomly report individual data, but in aggregates. Some group level. Your participation in the study is voluntary. By completing and doing whatever they're supposed to do, you are voluntarily agreeing to participate. You are free to decline to answer any particular question you do not wish to answer for any reason. Okay, this is quite interesting. A lot of online surveys I answer lately have forced answer options. So I either answer the question or I'm out of the survey. Interesting. We come to don't know options tomorrow. Whether it's fair for certain questions to offer don't know options to participants if you already require false answers. If you have any questions about the study, please contact, and then it's the PI's address again, and contact them anytime. So this is one example of informed consent form. Again, there's a lot around enough information to build your own informed consent form if you need one. Now, I said in experiments, it's difficult to disclose the full interest of the study beforehand already. What some people do, and what some advise, and this is a quote from VIENNA in 1996, you should be aware that to complete the study, the investigator cannot inform you of all its details. For this reason, certain details have been left out of the description of the study. However, the investigator will be happy to explain these details to you at the end of the study. you're free to choose not to participate, and your truth will not be held against you. And some would argue that in order to make people more comfortable, and maybe also to prime already the idea that there will be a debriefing about something that they haven't been aware of, some people claim that this is a nice idea to add for experiments. We've been playing around with this in one study and couldn't find much differences, to be honest, in terms of whether people liked the study and would be happy to participate in the follow-up and so on and so forth. But there are indeed academic studies about how effective different types of informed consent and debriefing are in different settings, if you're interested. Now, since we have economists around the table, right? Not a lot? None? A very interesting difference between what most of the social sciences and psychologists do and what economists do in experimental research is that economists usually don't deceive people. So I have a good colleague who's a sociological economist. I've got a beautiful lab for experimental research, and we would have had beautiful ideas for experiments, but I would always come with ideas where you deceive people, where you have to manipulate something and trick people. And then the economists say, not in our lab. Oh, that's a bit unfortunate. And I can't quite explain where this tradition comes from, but it is a matter of fact that experimental economics uses other types of manipulation of differences between groups. Again, we'll do more experiments on Thursday to influence reactions. So, if experimental economists would do an experiment on the readiness to share money among groups, he would say, hey, here's a group of 4 people, and each of you gets 10 euros at the beginning, and then there's certain rules to play a game. In the end, you can decide how you would divide up the money among the 4 of you. Right? That means that indeed there's 4 people playing, that indeed they get the 10 euros at the beginning, and indeed the money will be distributed according to those decisions in the end. There's no tricking, no deceptions. I just wanted to mention this. I assumed that most of you would come from other social science traditions where deception, I think, is more common, and I think it's also the more dominant perspective in experimental research. But there is, you would agree, right? That's interesting. It's really what type of literature you're reading and where you come from. Yeah. And I had interesting discussion. I gave a seminar about experiments last semester. And I had 2 students in there from the economics department, and we had very interesting discussions. It was very, very difficult for us also to speak to each other because the entire idea of how you approach planning an experiment is very different. Very different between those 2 disciplines. If you're interested, I've got 1 or 2 interesting articles that actually compare the 2. So if you're interested, drop me an email. Send that out. 5 more minutes, so quickly about data and publication, which now gets less time than it maybe should. Another aspect of ethical research considers the originality of the work, plagiarism, and the legitimacy of the work for interpretation. So plagiarism, I hope with this audience of advanced academics, I shouldn't say too much about plagiarism. Interesting that always elicits this kind of reaction. It is a serious problem. It is a serious problem among students. Serious problem among students, indeed, and even among scholars. It's an issue, and it remains an issue. It's getting very detailed when it comes to self-plagiarism. So can I actually copy-paste the page I've been writing for that article to this article or not? Difficult. Also very difficult, I don't know, in this academic context, I don't know, but there's still contexts where students, PhD students, would write pages and pages of text, and then the professor would take those pages and put his name. Serious stuff. And in the Dutch context, I know the people that have been fired in the last years for doing these things. Fired without any pension rights and anything. So those people would basically go. High-ranking professors.
My previous university professor get passed out. A student had passed out. He done an MTech dissertation. Later when it was realized that the MTech dissertation was a reform. His degree was anyway.
That happens fairly frequently, I think, that PhD degrees and master level degrees are taken away. We try to ensure now that we do some plagiarism check before we award degrees, which I think that helps a bit, but not always. You know, the clever student writes in German, in my case, and just translates the English text into German, which is very hard to detect for a machine. So there's a lot of these issues around which are. This is the maybe even more serious issue. But still happens, you know. Again, there was this case of a Dutch social psychologist some 7-8 years ago. He was a rising star in social psychology, worldwide, internationally. You know, publishing 150 articles in 10 years or whatever. And at some point, one of his PhD students figured out that whenever he would go to places to collect surveys and do experiments, he would very likely sit down at home and fill in surveys on paper himself and make sure that the answers looked. And that's not the only case. There have been a couple of cases like this around. So fabrication of data. I'm making my own data and make sure that it fits my hypothesis. It's easy to publish, you know, if you get great results. Serious issue. Fabrication of data would also include things like deleting outliers in your data which don't fit the patterns that you're interested in. And to what degree is that actually okay? To what degree can I play with my data in order to come to a final data file? Anything you wanted to add to that, or no? The scientific research enterprise is built on a foundation of trust. The scientists trust that the results reported by others are valid. Society trusts that the results of research reflect an honest attempt by scientists to describe the world accurately and without bias. But this trust will endure only if the scientific community devotes itself to exemplifying and transmitting the values associated with ethical scientific conduct. Yes. You publish something, I read it, and I have to trust you that what you did there is correct. And again, we're now coming to situations that more often data sets have to be publicly made available, so I can actually double check what you did with the data. But I can never double check how you collected the data. And I'm sure there's many cases around that we will never know of. And that has to do with publication pressure, being quick. And you know, in order to make it in academia, you have to publish a lot. And if you fabricate your own data and find cool results in those data, it's maybe easier to publish in top journals and more. And so, you know, there's a lot of good reasons why this is happening. Good data practice availability and access. So all primary executive data should be stored in a secure and accessible form. When you do your experiment, do your content analysis, make sure you have your data somewhere. And preferably so for a long time. Archive the code books that you use or the documentation you use to collect your data. Survey, questionnaires for surveys, stimulus material for experiments, all that should be archived together at some place. Research data, which, you know, from my own experience, Oh shit, yeah, I've got it somewhere on my hard drive that I, try to make sure that works somehow. Research data should be placed at the disposal of colleagues who want to replicate the study or leverage other findings. We're all very hesitant when we collect our own data to share it. I put so much work in this. Why should I give it to others? Yeah, it's fine, maybe for a certain period. So, put an embargo of a year, maybe 2 on the data, and say, I need 2 years to publish from the data myself. But at some point, you will be done with the data. And then put it somewhere to make it available for colleagues. And you should be certain enough that what you made with the data and did with the data, the results that come out of the data are fine to make publicly available. Like the data, needs to didn't fish around with the data. Freedom of movement of scientists, rights and peace of the world, that's somewhat issue. Publication-related conduct. Researchers should publish results and interpretations of their research in an open, honest, transparent, accurate manner. And we talked a bit about that already yesterday. Transparency being so important here. Researchers should try to ensure the earliest possible publication of the results of the research, unless commercial intellectual property considerations. Yeah, that in the social sciences is maybe less of an issue than in physical or medical sciences, I think at least. And we know that it often takes time to get stuff published. Authorship should only be based on a creative and significant contribution to the research. Hey. That's an issue in some contexts. The professor who has his PhD write stuff and then put his name on it. With this data, I just forgot to say, I think there were some links sent around to data archives. So a lot of good data is nowadays stored in good data archives. And I know from the European context that most of the countries agree to have a national social science data archive where people can store data and data documentation. Is there an Indian equivalent? Is there something like an Indian data archive for social science? Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah. So that's
I see it as well.
If these things exist, it's first of all good for you as a researcher because it's easy to store data there. Fairly easy, should be fairly easy if you document your data collection well. But especially for many of you guys who are working in PhD positions, these are great resources of data. If I look at what's around it in terms of data and what minimal use sometimes is made of this data, it's quite fascinating to see. I was a bit involved in the German election study, and there were of surveys, online surveys, and experiments, and counter analysis. There are 15, 20 journal articles written on these data, but there's so much more in these data, and it's all available and out there. So, and I'm not sure what about the Indian context, but it's great opportunities, I think, especially for young scholars to look at what type of data is actually out there and readily available. And if it's archived, it should be fairly high quality data to be able to work with. In the European context, there are some of these big data collection surveys, like the European Social Survey, for instance. Will survey in all European countries every 2 years for I think 8 or 9 times now. A lot of questions, different modules. That's a great data resource, right? That's really cool for some research projects. And so there's others. And sometimes, increasingly also media content data, for instance, is being made available online, especially in the area of election studies, but sometimes also beyond. So again, data archives is a good thing. One thing to quickly think about, and sorry, I'm going a bit over time, but we're almost done. Online research. There's a lot of people now doing research on Twitter and Facebook. And looking at the texts that are being written there and classifying those texts and so on and so forth. of all, is it okay to use those data? If we ask the Facebook participants whether it's okay to use their posts in research, it's information they've been giving, right? Here the argument often would be, well, if it's public groups, and Twitter also, that's a public medium, if it's public data, then it's okay to use it. Because they were aware that they're providing information to the public reality. So it's fine. So that question might not be that important anymore. Some studies do observational stuff in Facebook groups. So you enter a Facebook group, which is not a public group, but a closed group, and someone has to allow you to participate, and doing observation, who's talking to whom and what, and so on and so forth. Getting very tricky at that point, and probably pretty unethical. And then what we increasingly see is research papers to illustrate what they're doing and quoting posts or quoting tweets, even if they're from public Twitter street, public Facebook pages or from Twitter street. But that, of course, means that I just have to take that tweet and put it into Google, and I know the next second who actually wrote it. Is that how we want to deal with anonymity, even when we're talking Twitter? Were people really aware that would be happening when they tweeted something? That's all. You can have interesting discussions about this, and that's an area where a lot of grayness, I think, is still going on, and it's not quite clear yet what official guidelines would be. But I just wanted to mention this to you because I think for some of you who will be doing social media things, this is important to take into consideration. Now I warned you already that I am requiring some work to be done aside these presentations for Friday. So we will do a quick take-home exam, and I know it's long days also for you, so I don't want you to do too much work, but I'd like you to address these two questions, please. So just very quickly relating back to yesterday, in your own words, what is validity, what is reliability? Try to use your own words and not plagiarize what you find in Wikipedia. And why are they important, and how do they actually relate to each other? If you remember maybe that these figures that we had yesterday, try to do that in your own words. I think that should be fairly easy and fairly doable if you didn't fall asleep yesterday. And then also very briefly again discuss some of the benefits and some of the challenges also of random sampling. And thereby I mean most easily through simple random samples, right? And we discuss some of this. So again, not very hard, but I need to assess you and I need to have something to assess you for this course. So I thought these would be two doable things. That max 2 pages. If it's a good half page for every question, I think totally fine. Yeah. This is my unreadable email address. And just email the assignment to me as a Word document or PDF document. Have your name on it. That's the important thing. And then I can look at them. Ideally, I thought it would be nice to have them tomorrow morning already. I definitely need them by Thursday afternoon, the 2 take-home exams, because Friday, I really need to give you grades already on Friday to have the certification. So,